All right, it's time for one of my favorite French metal bands to really take the reins. And, well, I mean, now that I think about it, is there another French metal band? Huh. Anyway, it's time to talk about Gojira. Fortitude by Gojira. So, Gojira, the French metal band, these guys got their start at the turn of the century, like late 90s, early 2000s. Originally started off as Godzilla, but then changed their name to Gojira, kind of doing like a bait and switch in that kind of a sense. And I really have grown to enjoy these guys. They're not necessarily my favorite, but they still have this grand sound. Like, Gojira is a great name for this band because of how big and how menacing their sounds are. My favorite album from them for the longest time is still From Mars to Sirius. And I've gotten into The Way of the Flesh and La Fante Sauvage. Now, the last album that they put out, Magma, it was kind of a mixed bag for me. You know, there were certain parts that I liked and certain parts that I could kind of leave at home. And that brings us to Fortitude. So Fortitude kind of does a little bit of a switch on us. Like, Magma was kind of this looking at the world and seeing how much it sucked and just talking about that, where I feel Fortitude is a little bit more optimistic. It has a lot more of a call to action, we can get her done, that type of mythos. And one of the things that I really do like is, even though the music here is heavy, it's hard hitting, it's very like guttural in a sense, I still feel like it's a very optimistic. It's got this, it leaves this very pleasant taste in my mouth at the end of the day. And I love how scaled back it feels at times. Like, it's not just relentless beating you over the head metal music that they've had in the past. There's a number of points on here that are quite pleasant. Now, that's not to say that this album is devoid of those hard-hitting blast beats. This album opens up with one of the heaviest tracks to date of Born for One Thing, and it really is that, like, drilling you over the head with this pounding guitar licks and this monstrous drum beat that really ties everything together. We have the lead singer that is less growling and screaming as he's done in the past, and has a lot more of these like very beautiful harmonies that I really appreciate. I love this different approach of that, and like, I love how heavy hitting this all is. The second track of Amazonia is kind of like a paying of tribute to the Amazon rainforest and how it's being tragically destroyed through our own hands. I believe a lot of the profits of the song actually went to the rainforest itself. And I love the different sounds that we have on here. Those those metal picking instruments that we have. I'm not quite sure if it's culturally relevant, but I do like that it has this otherworldly sound to it. This almost, I think tribal would be the best word that they were hoping for. But I do enjoy this inflection of different sounds, this experimentation of different instruments to be played on here. And honestly, I really enjoy where Amazonia comes from and the style of music that we have on here. The next couple of tracks, Another World and Hold On, are kind of a dip for me. I do enjoy that Hold On is a little bit more mellow. It's a little bit more atmospheric. It has a little bit more overlays and a lot of different textures about this track. It's just not quite as tangible or quite as catchy as I was hoping it for. And Another World is grooving. Like, I love how the guitars have this continuous repetitive style of this, like, it has this kind of like a rolling effect in terms of the rhythm style of this. Everything is very unified in that structure. And it's a fun kind of, like, it feels like you're on a boat being rocked back and forth. From there, we come into Newfound, and Newfound has this really rockin' guitar effect that's actually found on a couple other tracks, namely Sphinx and Grind, where it's this almost like a slide, where it's this like, it's got this really strange effect on it, and it tickles me quite a bit. I do find that they use it a little too much. Like, this is the kind of effect that I feel needs to be used very sparingly. Now, it works on Sphinx because Sphinx, being more in the middle point of this album, uses this as like an intro that then leads into the song proper, and the song is very heavy. I just wish I liked the song a little bit more than I do. It's fine, but doesn't really do a whole lot. And by the time we have Grind, it's still a great track and one of the best that the band has done in quite a while. It's just, again, that inflection on the guitar work, I'm not quite sure if I'm on board, this being the third time that I've heard it on this album. Now, from there, we come into the 6th and 7th track, the title track of Fortitude and the Chant. These two tracks are probably my favorite moment. It is the centerpiece of the album, and I love how the Chant really is this driving force. It uses that rhythm section that we had from Another World and uses it here where there's this almost like a death march. You can feel like the stomping of the beats as the music is coming towards you. That then leads us right into the Chant, and I really do love the Chant. I love how rhythmic it is. I love how atmospheric it is. Again, I use the name of textures. There's a lot of different textures found within this track, and I love how it kind of brings us together in this almost this ceremony of music. Now, I've already talked a little bit about Sphinx. It's fine. Again, I like that guitar lick that's on it, but it doesn't really do too much. And from there, we go into probably my favorite track off of this album of Into the Storm. I wouldn't necessarily say it's their best work because it does follow some of the influences. It does feel very similar to a Meshuggah track, especially once we get into the track. It has this really beautiful intro where it's this race to kind of get to that midpoint of the track. I love how relentless it is. I love how speedy and fast it is. It's you can feel this urgency of like this storm coming into us and like this fear that you feel about it. And then once you're into the storm, it's that massive Meshuggah riffs where everything is right on tempo. It's almost robotic how like perfect it is in that sense. And I just love how brutal it all sounds. Like there's the teeth that I love with Meshuggah. I mean, it is a Meshuggah track, but it's that teeth that I love from Gojira. Now from there, it's the final track that I haven't talked about, the final track being Grind. This one is The Trials. And this is very similar to like Hold On, where it's very hypnotic. It's a lot more subdued. There's a lot of different harmonizations between the singing and rhythm guitar works that we have on there. Everything is very rhythmic in this one. And I love how almost hypnotic it all is. It like lulls me into this really nice environment that we have, getting ready for the Grind. And the Grind finishes us all off in the final little bit of the track. And I love how the Grind does end. Like it ends on a very beautiful punctuation note. It's not just like straight up in your face the entire time. It has quite a bit of ebbs and flows in it. So yeah, that's what I've got for about Fortitude. I really, really enjoyed this. I like this. This is probably my favorite album of theirs in the past 4 releases. It's probably on par with Sirius, if I'm being honest. I really dug it, and this is one that I would easily download. Which is, like, for me, who's not a huge fan of Gojira, I found myself coming back to this far more often than I have with Magma or La Fente Sauvage, as well as The Way of the Flesh. So that's kind of where I'm at for Fortitude, and I have a feeling I'll probably revisit this a lot more throughout the year, and I'm really excited too because I want to see how this thing will mature. So yeah, that's where I'm at. What did you guys think of Fortitude by Gojira? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting down below. And if you like what you see and you want to help support me, consider donating to my Patreon. I've left the link to do so down below. Even $1 a month really does help. If you want to see more of it, hey, I've got other areas. You can check out my podcast, Quid Prog Quo, wherever you find your podcasts, as well as here on YouTube. And you can check out my tabletop role-playing game where I talk about like Dungeons and Dragons and Paranoia. I'm going to be talking about the Star Wars games pretty in-depthly and my experience with those. And so I've left all those down below in the description. And that's what I've got. So thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.